folks. I'm excited because my man Justin is here. Justin, welcome to the Mikey G Podcast Experience. How are you doing, my man?
Thanks, I'm doing great. It's been waiting for this for a while, so I'm happy to be here and thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I remember I was you obviously stick in my mind because it was the first realization that I got. Well, two things were happening here. I was transitioning off Web3, which is like I just don't. If you haven't been in the NFT Web3 crypto deep crypto Twitter area, everything's a freaking scam. And so especially like cold emails or cold DMs, like you
Yeah.
click in links, you could be gutted, right? And so I'm getting emails from like all of these PR companies. And I had recently, now I'm like a 2, 3 months in LinkedIn, and I'm like, this can't be real. And I was like, you know what? I can at least reply to it. I'm like on AI being like, is this a scam?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Sure enough, it ended up being an agency that was representing you. And we had a conversation. And I was like, holy shit, my podcast has somehow made it into an algorithm out in the wild, wild interwebs. And now we're here. And it like you were one of the first people that came through that process. And I was like, not only did that happen, but you're a cool ass dude. And that
Yeah,
made me
thank you.
very excited. So you have
Yeah,
an
I'm glad we
incredible story,
connected.
man. We're gonna have an incredible conversation. Before we get there, just quick updates about myself. So, whew, dude, there's a lot going on. I've got the family, I've got the full-time job. We launched another podcast. So Fridays. I don't know how much are you into the AI world. Are you into the AI world much, Justin?
Yeah, AI
Okay.
creation, big time.
Perfect. So, would love to have you on. So, I'm helping my buddy from Australia that I was telling you about. He has built this killer AI safety governance platform that really allows you and it cryptographically documents everything the AI is thinking and deciding so it can't go crazy off the rails, right? And so we have started a Friday afternoon podcast where we talk about AI in general, and then invite people like yourself on that are using it and how's it impacting your industry. We talk a little safety and governance and like what are the coolest things that you're seeing in the world and how is it affecting your life. So we'll totally have you on that too. We started that a couple weeks ago, helping him build this company. We want to launch a little prototype app for messaging. So how many times have you gone to a conference and you're like, you get home and you're like, I met 400 people and I took
Right.
like two pictures. Like, what happened to all of that? And so we just built a quick little Telegram bot that you can quickly just like either upload an audio file or text, and it just puts it to an Excel sheet for you. Simple pain point solved, right? Nothing
Nice,
crazy.
yes.
So yeah, that's what I've been working on. And I already had a beautiful podcast earlier this week with this guy, Jay, who's on the forefront of AI, DAOs, just had a wild story. And this guy, man, you got to follow him on LinkedIn. He just goes off the rails every day about how much he hates like the powers that be are that are controlling AI.
Oh,
And
wow. All
but
right.
he has like really good points. But since
Mm-hmm.
he's not employed and he's kind of self-made entrepreneur, he just doesn't give a shit, dude.
Sounds like
And so we
me. I
had
need
a
to
we
meet
had a
this guy.
super super really robust conversation. It was awesome. But that's enough about me, man. The rest is 100% about you. And so, how we do this is before we get to the intro question, real quick about Jason, founder of Shit Show Creative. Can't wait to talk about how we even got that name. It's an agency plus original film and music studio making comedic media and branded content. 20 years of advertising, branded content, and comedy and big on radical vulnerability and weaponizing weirdness to solve real problems. I like just those facts alone, we could talk for so long. I cannot wait to have this conversation. But here's the most important part about Justin. Most of you might not know that he just told me this man's a freestyle rapper. And that makes me really, really excited. How'd I do on the intro? Did I miss anything? You want to add
Yeah,
anything real here quick before we dive deep, brother?
that was beautiful.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah, so
That's it.
thank
We're
you.
just going to keep it short and simple like that. But just like I said, just that alone, man, this is going to be beautiful. And with that being
Hmm.
said, people, here we are. I mean, I'm getting close to like the 250th time that I have said this, but Justin, the world famous Mikey G Podcast Experience question: how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today, my man? Please give me chapter 1, 2, and 3 to reiterate for the episode. I mean, not the episode, the audience that might listen to this in the future, or the people we currently have watching now that you've never heard this podcast before. Chapter 1
Hmm.
is your childhood. Here, prompting questions: parents, parental figures, be kind, work hard, pay it forward, vivid memories. Were you a tinker or did you play sports? Chapter 2, schooling, professional career. But remember here, I'm really interested in the insights of the failures and the lessons learned. Part of
Hmm.
and the main reason we are here, like I said before we came on the air, is we are here to help people level up, change lives, and change their perspective. And they're going to do it because someone's going to relate to your background, someone's going to relate to where you live, what you've done, and they're going to be like, if Justin can create shit show creative, I can too. That's why we're here, man. And then chapter 3, your current entrepreneurship endeavors, you being a founder. I'm really interested to dive deep here into what you're doing, what you're excited about, what the future looks like, and then we'll call it a day. So, with
Okay.
that being said, my man, anywhere in chapter 1 you want to start, I am ready to deeply listen.
Yeah, so I was born in Atlanta or Tucker, Georgia. I don't really
Hotlanta,
remember.
baby.
Yeah, so my dad was in hotels. He retired recently, but we used to move around a lot, like almost like the military.
Yeah.
Um, but my first memories were Nashville, which is
Mm,
pretty. I remember country music, and Nashville was kind of a small town back then. I mean, not like now.
right, right.
And it still has a place in my heart. I haven't been back in forever, but it's kind of exploded. And I remember country. I mean, I was always been a fan of country music because it's storytelling. And I mean, I wanted to be a country music singer when I was a kid, and now I can finally make it. But we'll get to that later.
I'm
Um,
excited about that too.
we moved to Fort Lauderdale on I think it was my fifth birthday.
Hmm.
And like I said, my dad was in hotels, so we actually would live in hotels for like 3 or 4 months at a time, which is
Yeah.
pretty unusual. So we
That
would
is
become,
interesting. So you're just moving that much that, and since your dad was in hotels, that became your living circumstances.
yeah, yeah. And speaking of vivid memories, I remember running, and when we would check into a hotel, I would run to the pad of paper and start drawing cartoons, basically.
Mm.
And I don't even know if they have those anymore because everybody has phones. But every hotel, just like they'd have a Bible, a Gideon's Bible, they would have
Yeah.
a pen and paper. And
Yeah.
this, I just love drawing
Yeah.
cartoons. I still do. Um, I was
Tell me.
never into
So
like realistic
I'm already
drawing.
going to jump in here. Why? Where does that come from? Was your influence of TV at the time? There's, creativity always comes up, and there's so many different perspective and nuances of creativity. That was this part of you, or was it an outlet for you? Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of The Far Side and
Mm.
Shel Silverstein.
Hmm.
I remember them exploring well, Shel Silverstein especially. He would explore these serious themes in a funny way
Yeah.
and would play with language, and there were no rules. I mean, he would have a poem sometimes that was like 5 words, or he would have one that was 2 pages, and
Right.
I feel like the drawing and the words worked together,
Yeah.
and it was cool that he did both. I mean, a lot of people don't do that. Most people
Right.
don't. And Far Side is just that weird, quirky sense of humor where you don't laugh out loud funny. You don't laugh out loud. It's like a New Yorker sort of, but
Yeah.
it's just hilarious and it sticks with you.
Yeah.
And it was just, we didn't have screens back We didn't have iPads or anything back then.
Right.
We didn't
Right.
have only Saturday morning was the only entertainment for us. And other than that, we had to make our own. So if I was bored, or I mean, I probably wouldn't even think about being bored. I would just get busy drawing, essentially.
Right.
And we would stay in these hotels for like months and months at a time. So I'd become the bellman would be like my cool uncles. As I would carry my backpack to the to the bus. The bus would pull up right in front of our um, hotel.
How did the
And
school work if you're traveling that much?
well, it was tough because I changed schools like every year and changed city. We were in like Palm Beach and Lauderhill, just different areas of South Florida, but it was like
Okay,
I would
but you were
I would
changing
be
schools then too.
yeah. So my brother and sister and I were really close, but I didn't have time to make friends for a very long time.
Right.
Um, and what was good and bad is that we would stay in these hotels and we would become friends with these kids from Japan or Austria or parts of America
That's so
for like
cool.
3 days, and they would just check out, and then you get a new group. And so
Right.
we were meeting a diverse, crazy, interesting group of people, but for short amounts of time.
Right. Right.
So I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize this till recently, but it was preparing me to basically connect with people quickly, but maybe not have very long-term friendships until middle school,
Right. For sure though.
which, which was formative. But yeah, I mean, I was probably in seventh grade before I realized, oh, you can keep a friend for a long time.
Right. Yeah. And that's, that's part of what we do here too, because it's the base of who you are as a human, and it's gonna make a lot of sense as we continue to progress on. So I'm hearing a lot of transient, but you're into drawing, the love and far side. What else do you got?
I like to travel. I mean, a lot. See new places. I remember not being picky about food.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids aren't picky either. And I think it's because my wife and I eat anything.
Right.
Um, I also, by the way, I remember this. A lot of my parents' friends would make a lot of money and go broke, like,
Ooh.
and or they would make a lot of money and be miserable.
Mm.
And I definitely remember
So, but
realizing
do
it.
you
Yeah,
remember that as a kid, or is this more of a reflection? Because if you can recognize that as a kid, that can be pretty profound, I imagine.
yeah. I mean, I definitely recognized it as a kid. I thought, well, they have all this money and they're miserable.
Hmm.
And then people without money were often happy. Like one of my first, I didn't even think about this till recently, but my first babysitter was Edna, this woman Edna, and
Yeah.
I was 3 years old. And then one day my mom and I go to drop her off at her house, and I'd never seen one before, but it was a trailer park and really
Hmm.
poor. And this was back when middle class people had babysitters. I don't even know if that's possible now because they're
I
so
don't think it
expensive.
is.
But back then we did. And she was like a member of the family and so happy and joking and hilarious. And then I remember seeing how poor her background was. I don't even know if I knew what poor was. I'm just like, this isn't
Right.
like my friends' places.
Right. Right.
And that really stuck with me too. So I really early on definitely saw a detachment between how much money you make and how happy you are. Like that was
Mm.
demystified very early on, for sure.
Right. Right. Um, and so as you're starting to evolve, and you're starting to socialize, right? Like into that of, is it the art that that continues on through this themes of which interesting you, like from the more kind of subject, creativity, math, science, all these different things? What that look like to you?
Well, I was the youngest of three, and my older brother and sister were, well, they're doctors now. I mean, but back then they were really into math and left-brained.
Right.
Um, and I remember I was just like the third kid, so I could do whatever I wanted. I mean, I had no
Yeah.
rules. I had no curfew. I was basically like the extra, you know, for
Yeah.
better or worse. It was like you do whatever you want to do, you know.
Right.
So I was like the creative kid for sure in the family. I mean,
Yeah.
perceived that way.
Right.
And I remember if there was ever tension, I would be the one to break it.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
because it was four, older brother, older sister, mom, dad, and then
yeah.
there's me. So I remember if there was if there was some political or tense debate, I would just make a joke and then relieve the tension.
Relieve
And
the tension.
and I
And that
wanted to be
was that your way of coping with it, or you just genuinely enjoyed it?
no, I think I was coping. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
I do. I honestly, I felt like it was a responsibility, if anything.
Yeah, yeah. At that point, you're like, dude, and I'm the same way. Like, I hate the, and I don't know. Like, if I were to be asked, like, where does that come from? I couldn't really tell you other than my mom was just a genuinely happy, really happy, positive person.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
admired that about her. And I just felt like everybody should feel that feeling. And it made me uncomfortable when you didn't feel that feeling, and I've had to
Mm-hmm.
get used to that over my life, right? Like, that's actually
Mm-hmm.
something I've struggled with a lot, is to, like, get uncomfortable with not everybody being as happy as I think everybody should be.
Yeah, especially with other cultures, right? I mean,
Mhm, mhm. It's an interesting concept. So, okay, so you're the jokester. Are you the class clown guy as well too? Does that carry over into school?
yeah. I mean, I would get I would get in trouble for it, which is fun. I was kind of a quiet kid, but like I definitely caused enough of a stir um,
Right.
for entertainment value. Um, and especially in like I went to a repressive Episcopalian school. That was
Mm.
every stereotype of a Catholic school was this Episcopalian school. I mean,
Right,
but worse.
but worse.
The school's still around. Like our friends' kids go there. But back then, like we would go to church every day for at least a half an hour,
Uh-huh.
and there was like no air conditioning. It was humid and hot, and kids would faint, and you would hear the sound of the heads
Oh
hitting the pew.
my god.
Yeah, we still remember this, my friends and I. It was like a book dropping, and it would be a kid passing out, and then they would take us to this room, and it was like the waiting room from Beetlejuice. It was like
Right.
10 kids, miserable, couldn't talk, who just fainted, and you can't say a word. It was actually worse back there, but
Wow.
and like sense of joy. I mean, one time my friend and I got a headmaster's referral and 3 detentions because we were singing too exuberantly in church.
Oh my
Like they
god.
wanted you to be miserable, but you could get in trouble for not singing, of course.
So that's
You
an
know.
interesting concept in the sense that, like, obviously you can go many ways with that, rebel, hate religion, all of these different things because of these things that forced upon you. What was the outcome for you now looking back on that situation?
Well, the thing is, I didn't have any of that in my family, so we never went to church, and I just happened to be going there because it was a good school.
Mm,
So the resentment, I mean, I actually knew back then there's all kinds of churches, so it didn't scar me on the whole thing. It just, I knew
that's
that this religion wasn't for me. But I realized there was good things too. My friend, there were great songs, like the best songs. I've been to a ton of churches, and the Episcopalian songs stuck with me.
yeah.
And I heard another. Funny enough, I heard a Jewish comedian who went to Episcopalian school, and he said the same thing I would say, that there's a lot of ritual and pageantry and theater of Episcopalian school, like the candles and the incense, and
Yeah.
they would give us wine, like real wine,
Wow.
in a golden chalice, and wipe
Right.
it. Like this
Right.
is uh,
And so there's something to be said in the sense that you said that, which is interesting. I've never like, see, this is why I love doing what we do, man, because I've just never thought about it in this angle already, which is like there is a sense of theater that if, and it sounds like you approached it this way, which was like singing louder, being more involved with it. And it's that actually becomes a creative outlet in its way if you look at
mhm.
it in a certain way. Does that sound right or am I off there?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. My seventh grade teacher, Mrs. Laystrom, she chose me to read from the Bible at the. It was called Lessons and Carols, but it was the big Christmas event. And I remember South Carolina, Charleston, and
Yeah.
from like a aristocratic family probably.
Yeah.
And she had me read from In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I still remember the whole thing, and that she
Right.
made me say was and not was.
Yeah.
But I think it was the King James, and I
Right.
liked it. I mean, I liked I like to make announcements, and
Right.
this is a
Yeah.
whole different story. But speaking of sports, so I was kind of in a bind because I looked athletic and I had an athletic build, but I didn't play because of all the moving. I didn't have a consistent sports thing so until middle school.
Right.
And so these kids had like a 5 year head start on me. So I remember the baseball team in seventh grade, I was on it, and it was the first time in 30 years they even had a team. They restarted the team. And I remember the first day, it was obvious I had no playing ability because I only played t-ball like when I was 8, and these kids
Right.
were playing fast pitch. And I remember as a joke, my friend nominated me as captain, and then I won. So there was like 3 captains, and I was one of them, but I was a joke. And the kids were laughing. It was obvious it was a joke. I remember the coach, Mr. Z, made them all run laps. I don't
Yeah.
think I had to run laps, but they ran laps because they
Right.
made a big joke of it. So get this. So I'm on this team. I'm a captain. My brother, I have a star on my hat. I remember I got in the car after practice. My brother's like, "What's this? Why is this star on your hat?" I'm like, "I'm a captain." And he started laughing.
Right. Right.
And I was like, "Oh God, this is bad." So I realized I have to bring something to the table because I'm a captain. So it was
Um,
time. It was time to decide who does the announcements, and I'm like, "I'll do it. I'm
all
doing
right.
it. I'm doing the announcements." And nobody else wanted to do it. And we had lost a big game, the first game of the season. And I walk up there in front of the whole school, and I'm at the podium, and I take a long breath, and I like take a deep breath, and I say, "In the game of baseball, there are wins and there are losses. Yesterday against St. Gregory, we were defeated. But today against University, victory!" And everybody started cheering and all this stuff. And I think they knew I was like really putting some, I don't know, hamming it up a little, but also I was authentic. Like I was
Right.
really
Right.
genuinely trying to inspire our team, and we won.
Yeah.
And I did all the announcements, and that was my thing. And that was a lesson I learned that you got to find what works for you. I mean,
Oh,
there's 3 of them. Not every captain has to be like the best player on the team. It's not going to happen. But one of them can be like the inspiring. I was the face for the team in front of the whole school because nobody went to the games. So
yeah.
I was doing the Stuart Scott recap. You know.
So you just did what I think is what makes humans so fundamentally different and so interesting is you just taught a lesson through a really interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
Mm-hmm.
about the impact of stories and um, going through these narratives have had on you from a young age, I guess. Was it, did you, because again, this seems like it's part of you. Like what you weren't rehearsing for that moment.
No.
It just dawned on you, right? Like talk to me about that. And that's not
Uh,
coming of age, but like realization.
this is one of my favorite movies is Stand By Me,
Hmm.
and I saw that when I was probably 10. I think it came
Yeah.
out when I was 10, and I was the age of those kids, or probably maybe a little bit younger. But
Right.
I remember the narrator, the and I think it's Will Wheaton, but he's the narrator, and he's the one that tells the stories. And when things are tense, he tells a joke, or when they're like stuck in the leeches, he breaks the tension. When things are really scary, he tells the story about the kid at the blueberry pie eating contest and the
Right.
castor oil and all that.
Right.
And I always related to that character and that kind
Mm.
of character because I was the one in the group that would remember everything and document it essentially. And I didn't realize it at the time until like the last year, but basically processing mini traumas, like small traumas, maybe big ones,
Yeah.
because a story is like you wrap it up. It's like I didn't get this either until recently, but being a writer is a little bit like being a control freak because you decide the beginning, the middle, the end, the lesson.
Yeah.
You remember what you want to remember and what you want to convey to somebody, and
Right.
how to take something that might be painful or even boring and make it interesting.
Right. Absolutely. No, man, these are all beautiful insights. One of the other things that you said before we kind of get into middle school and a little bit further on, which I think was just an interesting thing that you said, and you probably didn't even notice that I picked up on this, was when you were talking about this oppressive school, but then you immediately like I thought for sure your reaction was going to be like, yeah, it just gave me like a super negative perception about all of the things related with that. But you're like, no, like my family wasn't like that. And I had this kind of diverse um, background of friends that you have already talked about. Talk to me a little bit about that concept of like, because there's obviously people that go through a way more insular version of what you did in that like
Mm.
horrific schooling situation, and they come out with way different views. Talk to me about the importance of that diversification or experiences that you had to give you that reaction. That was just super fascinating to me that that was your reaction. Any thoughts there?
Um, you mean that I was able to not
Kind of
let it
shrug it off a little bit.
spoil?
Yeah.
Well, I think that there was always, well, here's the thing. In those tense environments, I made some great friends because
Mm.
I don't want to say misery loves company, but like that foxhole humor. Like
Yeah.
nothing's funnier than making a joke in a serious church where you're not supposed to joke. I mean,
Right.
I think one of my favorite comedians, writers, Pete Holmes says, I think he calls it church pew humor, but
Yeah.
and by the way, there were a couple big events. Like one time, the dean took me and the other clown, Danny Sullivan, the two of us out, and we thought we were in trouble. And he gave us a job to perform and act in a skit to get kids to go to the summer camp. So essentially, he identified us as entertainers and used us to advertise the summer program. So I thought that was interesting that it's not. I didn't get much encouragement like, oh, you're funny. You could be an entertainer or a writer one day. But that one thing meant a lot to me because I thought I was in trouble, and the thing that had gotten me in trouble now was all of a sudden useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So I
it's
remember
those
that.
micro moments are super impactful, right? And that's what's so interesting about having this conversation. And that totally makes sense. I do actually love the insight too, because I never thought, and I actually do think about this a lot, which is the misery loves company, however you want to describe it, but it's also a sense of like in essence camaraderie, right? Like
Yeah.
you're in this
Hmm.
shit situation together, so how do you make the best of it? And like you said, you made some really good meaningful relationships and friends because of that situation, and there's something to be said about that. That's why I always um was jealous of like some of my friends that got to like because I play tennis, right? And it's not as much of a team sport, but like the guys that my buddies that went to college and played like baseball or some like true team sport, there was this sense of camaraderie that I was missing that I
Mm.
was always jealous of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the only place, yeah, definitely. The only place I've seen it is after college amongst comedians or actors, troops. Like I wish I was more involved in acting because that's probably more my style, and they do have that camaraderie. Like since Shakespeare, acting
Right,
troops are like a team of artists essentially.
right, right. So talk to me about we're moving more towards high school. Oh, by the way, already amazing insights. Like we've got so many cool little insights and nuances, and doing exactly what I love to do is to pick your brain about the way you think about these concepts, which is totally going to help make chapter 2 and 3 so much deeper.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
let's start moving towards chapter 2, but I don't want to lose like And really in these more formative years, right? Like, what are the things that are starting to catch hold? Like, you're really obviously getting into the entertainment, creativity. Now you're eventually starting to think about like what am I going to do with my life. So what does that look like as it's unfolding?
Well, I was always interested in movies. I would watch the My parents didn't watch the Oscars. My brother and sister, nope. I would watch the Oscars. I remember watching it when I was like 10.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I would say film was a big deal for me. I wanted to become a director, and
Real quick,
so I
do you
would,
have a
yeah.
light or something in your room? Because it's getting super dark.
Is that better?
That is better.
I could do
Now
more,
I can
but is
see
that
that
enough?
beautiful face. Although you are a
Okay.
little grainy, but I think it's just the internet.
Is that
There
any
you go.
better? Or okay. So yeah, I wanted to be a director, and honestly, my parents would have been fine with that. I would think usually a parents are sometimes an obstacle to
Right,
chasing
right.
some fantasy like that. And no, they were fine with it. So we have the Fort. I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Lived here since I was 4, and we had the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. And by the way, Blockbuster global headquarters was here.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so they were tiny. It's almost like McDonald's. You know, they
Right.
started with two brothers. So McDonald's was or sorry, Blockbuster 5, and then a billionaire, Wayne Huizenga, from South Florida, bought them and then brought them. The Fort Lauderdale was the headquarters. So movies were actually a big. They were kind of the center of the movie universe a little bit for a while. Like I knew about Jurassic Park like 2.5 years before that movie came out. And I had some of the press materials and all this stuff that nobody had seen. And so I was really into film. And then we went to the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival and we had like VIP tickets. And I met Michael Caine. And
Nice.
I was in awe. I'd seen him in a bunch of movies. I don't even know which ones. I mean, he's been in like
Bajillion.
60 movies since then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably been 100 movies since then. So I remember like being embarrassed to tell him I wanted to be a director because I knew it was so cliche.
Right.
And then he said, well, cream rises to the top. And I really like that answer because he's not giving me false hopes.
Right.
He's not being too negative.
Right.
He's being very accurate
Yeah.
and kind of inspiring. Like maybe it won't be me, but it was kind of inspiring because if I'm really good, it's not going to be some secret people aren't going to find out about. As long as I stick with it, it's probably going to be somebody's
Yeah,
going to
and, like,
recognize it.
coming from him, like, again, man, these, like, super formative experiences of, like, what like, how different would it have been if he just, like, laughed at your face, right?
There's a scene in Birdman. I don't really remember it exactly, but somebody writes on a napkin in it. In that movie, it makes a huge difference. So sometimes, like a little note from somebody that they don't even remember is like a huge deal. Yeah, that was, yeah. What if he had laughed or been like, yeah, doesn't everybody want to be a director? Haha, because I don't think he's a director, right? So he
Right,
might make that. But he didn't. He didn't. And I actually remember being shy about telling people that. And funny enough, I don't remember anybody really knocking it,
right.
you know?
That's awesome.
Um,
So how old were you at this moment in time then?
actually 16, probably. I
Okay,
was young. I was always young in my grade.
okay,
So I graduated 17. So.
nice. Okay, so you're really actually just seriously, like, you're now manifesting this kinda creativity and, really thinking about that, so take me through the next steps then.
So then when I went to college, I didn't know what to study.
Alright.
And oh, by the way, I wanted to go to Harvard. And
Oh, okay.
I finished second in my class out of like 400 students, so I thought I had a decent chance. And I got a perfect score on the verbal SAT. And then I remember interviewing for it, and there was this doctor, and he said, he's like, "How did you get here?" And I was like, "I took my Jeep." And then immediately I'm like, and then he's like, "Oh, who paid for it?" I'm like, "My parents." And I'm like, "It's over." because that was the family Jeep. It wasn't my Jeep. It was like my dad bought it, they used it, my older brother used it, I took it, and I'm like, it's over. I just lost the. I knew it immediately, and I did have a job like on the
How
summer,
was
but
he
it's not like I
expecting
paid for it.
you to answer that question? Is my question.
I don't know. I wish I said like I took the bus or something. And I was so, I maybe I still am, but I was such an extremist. I'm like, I'm going to Harvard or I'm going to a state school. I'm not going to anything else.
And so
I
yeah,
think I
because
could.
that
Yeah.
was interesting because like you've kind of pawned off your upbringing is more of the into entertainment and creativity and not that like you were actually studious and could get good grades too. So talk to me about that juxtaposition a little bit. That's
Well,
interesting to
that's
me.
pretty interesting because my parents always told me, don't worry about grades. My mom said, honey, get a C. Like they were discouraging me from spending too much time studying.
Ooh, that is
And
a
my
super interesting insight.
and my older brother and sister, I don't remember, they never put pressure on us to get good grades or study a lot or anything. We put it on ourselves,
Hmm.
big time. And my brother and sister would never put pressure on me either, but I would look at them as an example. And I honestly, though, to be honest, it wasn't even about that. It was like, it was, I tell my kids this, but to me, it was a game. And I wanted to win the game. That's it. And if I was not interested in it, I would use that as a challenge. You know, that's the thing about reading books, required books. This is boring, and you have to trick yourself into enjoying it. That's what I do at
Mm,
work. You know, I've done that at work a lot, right? You have to become fascinated with stuff that you don't like, and at first it was hard, and then it became like even better. You know, like concrete could be fascinating if you dive deep enough into it, probably. You know.
oh, I'm
There's
I'm
a
sure.
museum of concrete in Portland. I'm like, I want to go. My wife's like, she still makes fun of me for that, but I'm like, I want to go to the concrete museum because anything boring usually is interesting if you go deep enough. So yeah. So by the way, this is important. I wanted to go to. I forgot about this till recently. I wanted to go to Harvard to work to be on the Lampoon. So I wanted.
Mm,
I didn't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, CEO or anything. I was just going there to work for the Lampoon. That's it.
right. Yeah, and that
And
makes total
yeah,
sense. And dude, I love that insight about turning it into a game. I've actually had a bunch of educators on trying to figure out technology and gaming and how those all work together because gamification obviously is a motivator for people. What and then in this day and age where school and all of these academics and it's just become crippling, I think, for kids, right? Um,
hmm
and it seems like you're taking that same kind of parental advice of like not being that much of a hard ass. Do you think that is one of the most critical factors to being creative and a good learner, like that inherent because again they weren't urging you but you somehow had the
yeah,
desire to be good, and it's like how do you explain that, how do you
yeah.
explain that in your words?
Well, one of the most, I one of a big deal for me was actually the first time I struggled at something was physics, and
Mm.
I got a C, but he was being generous, and it was like my Achilles heel. You know, I did great in everything, and then I met physics, but this is an important lesson because I loved physics, and it was actually good to suck at something I loved.
Mm.
And I'm still interested in it, and it's super practical and it relates to everything. And it was humbling to not be like, that sucks, I don't like that, I'm never going to use that. It was humbling to be like, this is important, I enjoy it, I'm just not naturally good at it, but maybe if I relax and over time get some of the core principles, I'll never master it, but that's okay, I'll be like a curious student of it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was big to me because honestly, I wish I was that about other things too, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's a super, super good insight. Dude, you're just dropping bomb after bomb here, brother. Okay, so I'm assuming the way you described the Harvard interview, that didn't quite pan out for you?
No, I remember going, I told my kids this, I still remember going out to the mailbox and getting the thin envelope.
Yeah.
Now it's probably an email, but back then, if you got a thin envelope, it was over. And funny enough, I was watching some movie with my kids recently, and the kid got a thin envelope, and I'm like, oh my god! Then now they get it. They're like, Dad, that was you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now they get
But
it. Now they get it.
it wasn't the worst thing. I immediately realized, okay, I'm going to Florida. I'll be with my best friends.
Yeah.
The friends from middle school. So it wasn't that big of a deal. Oh, this is important, but my whole life I've loved having a chip on my shoulder.
Mm,
So at the moment, I'm like, this is great. I will remember this forever, Harvard.
right.
You know?
Right. I'm going to take you down, Harvard. Okay. So you end up going to University of Florida?
Yeah, exactly. And that was cool too because they had an honors program, and what was cool about the honors program is you could take all these classes that other people couldn't take, and what was cool is they were just fun classes. Like I took history of rock and roll, and it was with this guy William McKean who said he was the second most world-renowned Bob Dylan biographer, and he was arch rivals with this guy named Dave Marsh, who was number one. I remember that. And
Nice.
the crazy, see, I would say that all day is, how Steve Jobs took that calligraphy class and it changed his life and changed
Right.
Apple forever and changed design. I always say the electives are the most important things that should be required. I've used the history rock and roll class. I've had like probably 6 or 7 accounts that were music related where it directly was
Right.
used,
Right.
was
Yeah.
very
And
important.
it brings up a whole big topic of that is like college, right? So like reflecting back with the college and your experience, what else was it during these years that are, really you think formative or insights that you glean? We've got the rock and roll extracurricular. Is there anything else there that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I took this advertising class with this teacher, Elaine Wagner. She was from the Richards Group in Dallas.
Hmm.
So I didn't know anything about agencies, but I quickly realized, oh wow, this is one of the good agencies, and they're also super buttoned up, like more than anybody else.
Right.
And I remember one day she offered the opportunity for us to watch Rashomon, the movie, the Japanese movie where it's basically a lesson in like everybody's perspective colors their view of things. So it's like 5 or 6 different views of the same event, and they're
Yeah.
totally different. And I remember realizing I'm like, is there extra credit? She's like, no. And I remember going anyway, and that was a big deal for me too because I realized you don't have to do things for extra credit or for a grade.
Right.
Sometimes you'll get more out of it maybe because there's no objective except just to take it all in.
Right. 100%.
Eh,
And some of the most magical things happen that way too.
And then the cool thing about college, especially a big college, maybe all of them, is they would have professors and politicians, and Gorbachev came, and you could see people speak about stuff. Of course, it
Right.
was free, and you didn't get any credit. There's no grade, and it was awesome. Tom Green, the comedian, came and talked about testicular cancer and sang this funny song about it. And he had that battle with cancer, and it was cool because in a funny way, he really raised awareness of that with
Yeah.
young guys
Yeah.
because he was probably in his mid 20s.
Was this road
And
trip days?
this is even before. It was probably
Mm.
like it was probably like 2 years before, not long before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember. I remember too. I studied abroad in Spain for a summer, and that was huge. I mean, that opened my eyes to a new country, new language, new laws.
Yeah. Yeah. And the things you should and shouldn't do. So like you've already painted a really cool picture, right? So you're from middle class. You've got the kind of the Catholic school hardcore upbringing experience. Humor has started to be a part of your life. I love the insight about the chip on your shoulder and just the juxtaposition of how you presented your childhood. And you're like, oh yeah, and I finished second in my class and I had a Harvard
Mm,
interview.
mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm.
Talk to me. So you're walking out of college now. You got a degree in what? And you are like, I'm tackling the world and gonna do X, Y, and Z. What does that look like?
This sounds crazy, but I wanted to. It was a dream of mine to be to drive the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And so I applied. I applied for a job driving the Wienermobile, and I remember the guy interviewing me was like some senior exec at Oscar Mayer, and I was, I was like, I just want to drive the Wiener. I want to ride the Wiener. I've always wanted to be in the Wiener, and like he was looking at me mortified. And the more I said that, the more shocked he was. And then he said, "We call it hot dogging. You would be a hot dogger," which I thought was funny because it's called a Wienermobile, but apparently you can't
Can't
really
say
throw
that
that
in
word around.
corporate. There's a
So
whole.
I
Please
did.
tell me you've done a YouTube skit on that, or can me and you do a YouTube skit on that, please?
Ah, yeah. I mean, I wrote something about it for the first time, like on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. Because here's the thing, I didn't get that job, but then, like, one door closes, another opens. Like the student paper had an ad for a Red Bull energy drink to be the marketing
Mm,
brand ambassador,
right.
and nobody knew what Red Bull was. It was new. I knew what it was because I visited my friend in near Amsterdam, and they had this drink that was not alcoholic and sold at all these bars, and I'm like, that's really weird. Like, that's cool that there's something that has no alcohol, but apparently has some edge to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I introduced it to the University of Florida, and I remember people like some of my friends liked it. There was this group of girls that would come over, and they're from a sorority, and they'd be like, "This is terrible, Justin. Nobody's going to drink this. It tastes like medicine." And I
Yeah.
said what they told me to say. It's not for everybody. So then they go to New York and they come back and they're like, Justin, do you have any of that Red Bull? I'm like, I thought you didn't like it. They're like, oh, they had it all over at this club, Limelight in New York. I'm like, no,
Of
you're not getting
course.
it. And then they laughed and I'm like, no, you're not getting it, which they also told us to do. Well, you were supposed to give it to Pinots, people in need of energy, not people that went to New York and thought it was cool, you know? We would
But
find
so
people
so
who
talk
were
to me
like,
a little bit about this because like this is interesting to me. It seems like they had a whole playbook here. What did you learn about that experience? Because you're just like rattling off things that you should say
you mean
and
Red Bull?
behaviors that you've done. Like it seemed very calculated already at that moment in time.
You talking about you mean Red Bull?
Yeah.
They taught me, I mean, fundamentals of everything I know. They said, don't demystify the brand, which by me saying it, I'm demystifying it. But like, when people would say, back then, they would say, oh, I heard there's Bull's semen in Red Bull. We'd say, people say a lot of things about Red Bull. Like, it was never defensive. I
Right.
remember at training, they would have Coke. I'd be like, how do you have Coke at a Red Bull? They're like, they're not a competitor. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, you can drink whatever you want. It was very much not, there was no Kool-Aid to drink. The only Kool-Aid was no Kool-Aid.
And
There was,
what do you attribute to their success then? Because of that genius and the way that they just approached the brand? Because I always use them as a case study. Um, I used them early on as a case study as Web3, where I thought Web3 was like, okay, this is the digital emergence of like what Red Bull did way before, which was like you now have a way to tangibly bring in this digital entity to create a community around a brand. Whereas
mm-hmm.
Red Bull defined a lifestyle, which was that extreme sports and outdoor stuff, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, they did so many. So first of all, one thing is the founder, Dietrich Mateschitz, he worked for Procter and Gamble for like 20 years before he
mhm.
started it. So there's a couple lessons there. One is he would have said, he told his god, I knew his goddaughter, and he told her to work for some big corporation. He's like, you got to learn the rules to break them. So that was the first thing. He thought it was fundamental to Red Bull that I actually started working for a big global corporation that didn't do any of that stuff.
I'd agree.
And and then he went to Thailand for a business trip, and he saw these truck drivers drinking this tonic, and it looks like a pharmaceutical bottle, but it's a brown small
Right.
bottle of Red Bull. There's no bubbles. It's
Yeah.
the same flavor, and and it's the same logo, just with the Thai font. And what was cool is he gave that Thai owner of Red Bull 50% of global Red Bull. Like the guy's probably a billionaire now.
Oh,
He
he
could
is.
have So he could have just stole it theoretically, or had a different brand, or had a different color. But I think it was amazing that he gave him half, because I would assume it's total authenticity. I mean,
Yeah.
that word's thrown around so much, but like that's the real deal. He gave half of the company so that he knew it was real, and there's a real story behind it. And he's not just some Westerner that stole something from the East
Right.
and remarketed it. And
Right.
that's really cool. I mean, it clearly worked out for him and his family. Also, they would very be protective of the logo. They would be very protective of the logo. They would only allow people at the time who were athletes or the people who drove the energy of the car around, which I did later, the car with the can on top.
See, you got to drive the Red Bull can better than the
Yeah,
Wienermobile.
way better than the Wienermobile. I mean, way better. Especially, I was driving it all over South Florida and South Beach and Key West for the spring break, and
You hear that, Wienermobile
yeah,
CEO? Justin made it.
exactly. Exactly. And then Dumb and Dumber was, I remember the Mutt Cuts Dumb and Dumber band. So I had a
So
thing
good.
for like special, quirky promotional
Right.
cars. And yeah, it was, I also liked that I was a student brand manager, and they would put us up in a nice hotel. They flew me to Vegas. I saw Cypress Hill, and
That's
um, they
amazing.
would treat us like senior execs, which is awesome. And I'm guessing that too is important to the brand, because they didn't look at young people as an afterthought. They probably knew, like, if a 17 or 19-year-old's like dropping gyms all the
Yeah.
time, you
Yeah.
could pay some marketing company millions of dollars. You probably get better gyms from just talking to somebody who works for you for
Yeah,
like
and
no
it's
additional money.
true. It's true. That's this true concept. It's funny that it just comes in different forms, but like that is the essence of like the real like start of like massive guerrilla marketing too, right? And
Yeah.
people ask me all the time, like, Mikey, like I've seen you grow your podcast over time. Like, how did you do it? And if you would even look at my like quote unquote following, it's nowhere near these top people. But
Mm,
I still get quality guests time and time again because there's no secret here. It is just
mm-hmm.
making relationships and connecting with people. And like it seems like Red Bull understand the importance of that. Like who better than to have people on the ground on the streets promoting your product that genuinely cared about it or thought they liked it, right? Like
And
what else
a
do you need?
perfect example of how they would sponsor athletes is Shaun White. They built him a secret lair where he could practice his tricks somewhere in Colorado,
Right.
and nobody could see it. So it was the opposite, where normally they'd be like, "We got to build this in a prime location where everybody sees it," and you would never even hear about it unless you were like reading some snowboarding magazine. It would be some small
Right.
mention. But I to that point about relationships. You know who knew about it? It was probably every professional snowboarder.
100%, man. So, what do you think your biggest takeaway is from that? And then I'd love to get into kind of two to three more experiences during this kind of chapter two. You're starting the formative career. Um, but start with Red Bull, and then we'll go from there.
Well, another huge thing there, maybe the biggest lesson, is that they created a new category. And they
Right.
said, why be the 200th biggest soda in the world when you can be the only, or the biggest energy drink, the only one first?
Right.
So just create a new category. That's life. Be your own, be a category of one, or at least create a new category. It's the same with music. Create a new genre. Don't be like the 500th or 5,000th best blues guitars. Create oceanic blues, which is a
Right.
fun freelance project I had. It was to create a genre of music for this Australian woman that won Australia's Got Talent. So we did it together, but we created oceanic blues, which I love, because create a subgenre. Don't be like the 5,000th best copy of somebody else. Be the best version of yourself. Like I always say, Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everybody else is taken."
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, so after Red Bull, let's keep on progressing here.
Well, Red Bull was okay. So my first job out of college, and I stayed in college as long as I could. I got my master's in international business. This was like the dot-com days when you could graduate, you could be like vice president of marketing with no experience.
Right.
Um, the market bombed, like collapsed while I was in Barcelona interning.
Yeah.
um, which is was bad at the time. But I remember my friend doesn't remember saying this, but he said, you know, this whole .com thing, it's going down. It's not going to last. He's like, but wait 5 or 6 years, it's going to come back. And he was
Right.
so right. And he's like, I don't remember saying that. I wish I had bought Amazon stock.
Right.
But so I ended up working for an Italian scooter company because my friend, his dad owned a scooter business in Miami, and then basically a scout for this Italian family comes by and then offers my 22-year-old friend the exclusive North American rights to import and sell Malaguti scooters.
Wow.
So me and him and another friend from college, we were basically the management team. We set up 60,
And
70
is that just
dealerships.
like luck and timing or connection? How does that happen?
That's even a crazier story. So the guy the guy kept coming back, the scout for the Italian family kept coming back every day to this store. And my friend thought he was homeless. So like the fourth day, he buys him a sandwich. And then they're talking, and he tells them that he's here scouting, trying to find an importer for the Italian brand, that they'd been thinking about it for 50 years, but they were looking for the right family. They were a family business, so they wanted an American family business. So he must have said the right thing, because we got the rights to import and sell it, and we took Italian lessons as part of that's how I learned a lot of Italian. I spent a summer in Bologna at the factory,
Wow.
and so it was cool because I studied international business, and then within the first year I was actually doing it, which is great. I mean, we were making very, very little money, and my friend probably lost a lot of money from it, but it was great. There's, priceless experience. And I remember being at the Super Bowl, the Playboy party in New Orleans at the Super Bowl in 2000, and Nicolas Cage and Mark Anthony and Tara Reid and all these people were there. And we were like the sponsor that gave the least amount of money, but we were just 22 and we are so aggressive. So we're just talking to everybody, getting pictures of everybody. Mark Anthony's posing on it. And then he got in trouble because I guess he had a deal with Vespa and he thought it was a Vespa. And it was Anne Rice, the Interview with the Vampire was her mansion.
Yeah.
And I just remember Tom Arnold was there. He was the nicest guy. And we talked to him for like 20 minutes. And we were kind of like making no money, but living the dream. But I only did that for a year. Then I went back to, so I'll quicken things up a bit about, but I knew I wanted to be in advertising and a creative. And I had known that since I took that class with that Richards group.
Yeah.
Teacher the freshman year. And by the way, she said, if you really want to be in advertising, leave right now and go to Miami Ad School or a Creative Circus. Go to a portfolio school. She's like, leave. And then I did, and she's like, study anything but advertising if you stay. And I still studied advertising, basically just because I really liked it. And I ended up taking her advice like 5 years and a lot of money in debt later,
Yep.
So, yeah, I went to Miami Ad School, 2-year program, spent 3 months in Prague, almost dropped out. I mean, I was tempted to drop out so many times. I thought it was going to be so easy. I mean, if you watch ads, it's like it looks like the easiest thing in the world because most of what we know is a Super Bowl ad, right?
Right.
And then I realized very quickly it's not easy. And
right.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. And
okay,
that was
so you got through it. Why did you not quit?
Oh, that's funny. My friend from Brazil, he said there's a Brazilian expression that translates as "what's a fart when you're covered in shit," and I really listened to that, and I didn't, because I was in so much debt already. I just had to finish. And what's cool is actually maybe the last month of school is when everything clicked for me. Like, I figured out my voice and what I wanted to say, and I stopped worrying about what other people wanted, and I found a great art director who was like me, like would make stuff as fast as me. And instead of overanalyzing what to make, we would just make all of them and see what turned out the best. And we're still friends, and he's really prolific, and I am. And I always thought you can't control necessarily how good something you make is, but you can control how much you work, how much time you put into it. I don't even say work because it can be fun, but like I wasn't precious about this campaign or that ad. I never have been.
Right. And what do you think that click was? Was like you mentioned a couple things. Was there one over the other?
I think it was getting, you mean what clicked? I
Yeah.
think it was, honestly, it was actually something different. It was we're getting rejected over and over and over and over and over, over.
Interesting. And the rejection to the point where you were just like, I don't care about rejection anymore. I'm still gonna do what I want to do, or what was the
Yeah, I mean,
insight?
I was immune. I think I was immune to it.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I realized I couldn't please people doing what I thought they wanted, so I might as well please myself doing what I wanted to do.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful insight. So you graduate ad school. Give me about another maybe two lessons, insights from this part of your life before we start getting into your unbelievable story of Shit Show Creative and the things that you're working
Oh,
on
you
now.
mean like early career, basically?
That yeah, and like early to mid career.
Yeah. So this is a big deal because I think it was right after graduation. Crispin Porter in Miami was the hottest agency in the world,
Right.
and they had the first paid internship they'd ever offered, and so everybody in the school entered it. And I remember overhearing my rival saying, the people who get it, like the writers who get it. I remember him not saying my name, and I overheard him, so that like hurt really hard. And it was basically me and him were probably the top to get this internship. And I wrote I wrote this manifesto, and it was a cardboard box, and it said, "We'll work for free." And then on the other side, on the other side of the cardboard sign, it said like, "All I ask for is the opportunity to work side by side with creative visionaries, changing this art form which started in cave drawings and changing to this ephemeral, amazing thing that will change society and send emotion into the hearts of men. I will
Yeah.
use screenplays, stories, poems, and technology yet to be invented," which is kind of funny because it's prophetic because AI had not been invented. And I got it. I mean, I won. I remember driving in the rain and getting that call, and it was huge. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, I I I didn't have companies knocking on the door to hire me, and then best agency in the world was going to pay me to intern there. And then I did intern there, and I would work from like 8 in the morning, and if you left at 10 at night, they'd be like, "Oh, leaving a little early, Cram," like
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what did
And
you
then,
learn from that experience? Because it's interesting. I did the complete opposite. I went to design school at Penn State, and I just hated the mentality of all of the designers that I was surrounded by, just their aura, their egos, all of the different
hmm
things. And I went to a couple agencies, and I was like, this is the last place on the world I ever want to be at, surrounded by
hmm
these types of people. Um, and it just wasn't for me. So, what were you seeing at that point in time?
well, maybe it was like I don't. Maybe it was a little like middle school because it was this toxic environment, but some of the people who worked there are the nicest people I've ever worked with,
Right.
and humble, and really curious to see what you thought about stuff, you know? I mean,
Hmm.
there was probably like a handful of jerks, you know,
Yeah.
but most people at least seem to be so much more. And I had nothing to compare it to, so I will say that the most supportive people I ever met were at that
Right.
place, which ironically was super toxic as an agency, but individually it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, nobody really told you to. Maybe a couple other people would tell you to stick around, like almost trying to help you out, like you got to stay till 1 in the morning. But the leadership would never tell you that, or a creative director would never tell you that.
Yeah. It was just kind of this peer pressure thing of if you're not doing this, you're not gonna make it type of thing.
And the biggest lesson, one thing I really took with me is that they never talked about other agencies, other ads, nothing. They wouldn't share campaigns. It was not, it wasn't like they didn't like other agencies. It was just not, they wouldn't compare themselves to it at all. It just never would happen.
So how
In
long were
fact,
you there, and then what happened after?
I was there like 3 months. And by the way, the first week I worked on this project for Method, which is called Come Clean. And I wrote, it was a thing where you would like confess your sins for the new year. And then the voice of God would cleanse you of it. It was essentially like an audio follow-up to Subservient Chicken. It was it was a lot like that, but like, oh, let's do an audio thing. And it was the same
Hmm.
Barbarian group that made it, and I wrote like hundreds of these confessions and responses. And I worked on this thing called, and the concept wasn't mine. It would be like the creative director would sell it, and then he went on vacation, and then me and two other interns would write these things.
Yeah.
And then, long story short, after 3 months of like working and on Virgin campaigns and Method and Burger King and Mini and all this stuff, I didn't get hired. And I went into the agency really early because I thought Alex Bogusky might be there, and he was there, and I'm like, oh my God, my heart's beating so fast. And so I go in there, and I start talking to him, like thinking to myself, what am I doing? I'm really doing this. And he's like, what did you work on? And I'm like, oh, I worked a lot on that Come Clean project for Method. He's like, I didn't like it. It's like, okay. And then he's like, what happened with the Burger King assignment? So basically there was this Burger King headline project for Fish Sandwich where I wrote like at least 500 headlines trying to sell this Burger King headline for the BK Big Fish.
Hmm.
And nothing got chosen. And I was like, I don't know. I had 500 lines. Did you like any of them? He's like, nah, I wasn't really feeling them. And then so he was not into anything I worked on. And then I was convinced that that Method project sucked, I guess. I liked it. And then it didn't win anything at the one show, and it didn't win anything at the Addies or anything. And then I ended up taking a job in an AKQA in San Francisco, which is a digital interactive agency, which people told me, by the way, they're like, don't go there, you're going to get pigeonholed. I'm like, well, nobody else is hiring, so I'm going there. So it was like, I was working there 3 months at my new job, and all of a sudden Cannes came, the Cannes Lion, and it won Grand Prix.
And all you've got is the head of Crispin saying, "I hated that."
Yeah, and he had a big part. Well, he had like in some ways a big part in it because he was the one. It was the Indian woman was the voice of God, which I thought was a cool choice instead of like a booming deep male voice, which you'd expect. And yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't like it at all. And he's the only opinion that mattered. They would always say that every website is optimized for Alex Bogusky's laptop. Like back then, Mac was only 5-10% of the market, and so other agencies sometimes it didn't even work, and that's probably why it did really well in the ad industry is because it was always optimized for his computer, and everybody in advertising had Macs. Like maybe people not in it didn't have it, but it was crazy because I should tell you this. After I didn't get that job, and he said he wasn't feeling any of the fish billboards lines.
Yeah.
I'm walking with my sister-in-law and brother in Times Square, and I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, what? I'm like, that's it. They're like, what? I'm like, they took my line, and it's not even a good one. It was the second one I wrote. It was terrible. And it was Reel It In. It was a pun.
Yeah.
And it bothered me because it didn't say anything about it wasn't on brief. The brief was about it's so much bigger than the fish fillet or whatever.
Right.
Fillet of fish. So
Had
it
nothing
not
to
only
do with
was,
the size.
yeah, which really bothered me because I mean, you could argue over whether it's a good line or not. I don't think it was, but you can't argue that it didn't communicate what it was supposed to communicate. So I was like
Right.
so frustrated. I'm like, was this all a mind game that like they took the second line I wrote and then they just had me working for weeks and weeks on it? I don't know.
So what are your thoughts on, like, we can fast forward a little bit because you've been in ad agencies and everything, and we've obviously seen the rise and now what I would call kind of the fall and crumble of them. Uh, what happened?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, uh, I don't understand why people buy agencies like they're assets. I mean, all you're buying is people and ideas. You don't
Hmm.
really own anything. So I don't
Right.
understand these like holding companies that gobble people up. It's like, what do you, they treat it like other businesses and it's not, it's not like, I get like Warner Brothers, and let's say Lucasfilm and Disney. You're buying all the Lucasfilm IP, so that makes sense. But there's not really IP in advertising, so I don't understand it, and I think it ruins the culture. And then when a holding company makes some of the best agencies in the world change their email addresses, I don't even know. It's like they're trolling people for no reason.
Do you think that's just a
When using,
product of the market and the way that it's just so easy for anybody to create now? So now you're competing against billions of people, and there's no more this level of like this assumption that if you need to produce top tier creative, you go to a creative agency because you now have guys on a skateboard drinking
oh
cranberry juice
yeah,
and getting multi-million dollar deals because the market, which is people that consume content, they don't care where it
well, it
comes.
exposed to a crazy. I mean, it's always been true, but it just exposed that nobody knows. I mean, Rick Rubin says this all the time, that nobody knows why something's a hit. Nobody knows what's going to be a hit.
Right.
It's all a crapshoot, and the Instagram took that to, I mean, just proved it so much. Like, I actually saw Ocean Spray at Sundance brand storytelling event, and they were talking all about this. So, that they just struck gold with that guy drinking the Ocean Spray on the skateboard. But what was cool is that the CEO drank the Ocean Spray while he was skateboarding. Then they had Mick Fleetwood do it. So sometimes it's about all we can do is respond to something that already happens.
Yeah.
Now, to use another analogy related to what you're saying, is that Saturday Night Live is having a tough time, I think, because the random people you see on Instagram are going to be funnier than anything you see on
Right.
there. And
Same thing.
they've already done they've already riffed on whatever news story even you're going to do or anything.
Yeah. So, but I'm really interested in your insights and perspectives seeing all of this evolve. What are your big takeaways from being in this industry over time up till now? We won't talk about the future now, but like, what are your takeaways? What is your advice for people out there that really want to do this stuff and are passionate about it? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think it's a good time to get it. I think that some people would say it's a terrible time, but I think it's a good time to get into advertising because it's whatever you want it to be.
Mm,
It could be, um, it's everything's kind of converging. The specific roles aren't applying anymore. Like an art director can definitely be a decent writer, a good writer. A writer can be an art director. All this stuff's converging, and I would say we're not competing against each other anymore, and we need to get that out of our head. We're competing against everything. We're competing against Netflix or
yeah.
a theme park or anything. And to me, that's
Anybody that has
exciting.
a cell phone in their pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And Howard Gossage was a San Francisco legend from like the 50s or something. But he said, nobody cares about advertising. People care about what interests them, and sometimes it's an ad, like
Yeah,
something to that effect. And
100%.
it people love sometimes ads. They talk about them all the time. I mean, Geico, like I think they sometimes love ads and they're not trying to hide being an ad.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they like something that's not an ad. It's that mushy middle where you're kind of think you're too cool to be an ad, but you are an ad. That's weird. You gotta be like a Fortnite video game placement where you're not really an ad, you're just entertainment, or be on the opposite side where you're just a really good Geico ad or something. And
Yeah.
you're not, I don't like the whole too cool for school where the fried chicken ad was clearly written by somebody in Portland that doesn't eat fried chicken, and it's like ironic about it. I don't like that. I don't like
Yeah.
when this comes out of like how to win friends and influence people, but I would never resent the person buying the product or the client because it's never going to work out for you. you're always going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the Geico example, I think there's many reasons for that to happen. But back to your point about being first, right? Like they were really one of the first people that took such a mundane product and just applied humor to it and realized the power of humor in mass
Hmm.
advertising, right? And they were never, to your point about the mushy middle, one of the things that I learned from my CEO that I always admired, not CEO, CMO, that I always admired is, you know, as digital ads proliferated and data, big data this, big data that, the amount of companies and brands that were testing their ads before they hit the air because they were trying to get the most optimal viewership and whatever. We
Hmm.
never did any of that, right? Like just a gut feeling. Like did when the Martin came to pitch their ads, did we laugh or did we think it was cool? Like that was
Yeah.
our barometer, right? And that just we've so muddied the water on dehumanizing being human. And
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
really, really frustrating. And I mean, there were some campaigns worth millions of dollars that never saw the light of day because
Wow.
on paper they looked cool. And then after they got cut together, they were dog shit.
Mm,
And so,
mm.
but obviously this is coming from a brand that spent $2 billion plus on marketing. So like we had that luxury. Not everybody does. I get that. But that still doesn't change the concept that you are ultimately talking to human beings. And we get so distracted about the way we think we should do things and so driven by the bottom line, it just dilutes all of the things that actually matter to us. And Geico held its ground on that. And I think it's one of many reasons why they were successful. And I always admired that.
Well, that's sort of a category king as far as they created the comedic, interesting, funny
Yeah.
insurance
Out
ad.
of the
Now other
mundane,
people are
right?
doing it, but they created it. So
Yeah. And it was as simple. It was the Seinfeld formula, right? It was a universal truth, something that somebody could relate to every day.
mm,
Um, and at the end of the day, insurance is kind of cheap, and it's like, hey, we're not going to pay the A-list celebrity, but we can get the D-list celebrity for 1/100th of the price, and people still know who they are, so let's do that. Um, and yeah, it worked out. It was brilliant.
I got
Uh,
a car. I got it. I was parking my car in my apartment complex, and I was just not paying attention, and I hit this nice Mustang in the back tire, and I crushed it. And I'm like, oh my god. So I talked to long story short, I talked to security, and I got in touch with the owner. And I didn't get in touch with the owner. Somebody called me. It was a U.S. Marshal, and that's who I hit. That's a car I hit. But they have a whole department in charge of. They're so big. They have a whole department in charge of insurance claims. And they're like, "Who? What insurance do you have?" And I was like, "Geico." They're like, "Whoo, that's great. Okay, this is going to be easy." And that was a big moment for me too, because I always liked the ads and I had the product and I guess I trusted it. And then the shit happened, and then it was great. It was a
yeah,
great experience, and like
yeah.
that's where everything comes together.
Yeah, that's when it all comes together. And I mean, those are the true. And I mean, insurance is insurance. You're never gonna please everybody. Um, but getting back to let's start transitioning to this evolution of what you're doing now. Anything else before in this kind of middle of your life and your career with this advertising stuff that you want to touch on before we get into shit show creative?
Well, just that I started off in digital, then I left. AKQA was doing really well. Then I left at a weird time. I mean, because it was kind of like doing great, and I was getting more money, and I left to go to an old school agency, Hal Riney Publicist, because I wanted to do TV. So then I was there for 2 years. I finally do TV. Then I'm like, I want to work internationally. So me and my partner went to Amsterdam. So I will just say for this part of my career, honestly, I was almost like checking boxes
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I was so paranoid. I was terrified of being pigeonholed.
Mm.
And
Because you
other
got
people
that.
had put that fear into my mind. And
Right.
I think they
Right.
were in some ways right, because perception's reality and people view you as you're TV, you're digital, you're this, you're that, and I'm like, I could not deal with that. So that's what I did. I was checking the boxes, and then here's the funny thing: one box I always wanted to check was freelance. I always wanted to try freelancing. It always seemed like a dream to me.
Right.
Because I would work at these sweatshops and the freelancers would be like, "Doo, doo, 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 how
Yeah.
you doing? Hey."
Yeah.
And then I said, "Wow, you seem happy." And this guy's like, "Have you ever seen an unhappy freelancer?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "That's because you see us when we're booked." Ha ha. Which is true, you know. It's like an
Yeah.
actor. They're so happy because they're working. Of course they're. So I kept kind of delaying. I would almost like hit the panic button, and just when I'd left a job to freelance, I would end up taking a full-time job like 2 weeks later, and I kept doing this. And then my first son was about to be born, and I was at this craziest sweatshop, and I basically like quit my job like 2 weeks before my son was born and had a meltdown, like the mental health thing. Like I was so burned out. I mean, and I'd kept it inside so long that once I quit, I was so happy for like a day, and then I was like, it was like an existential dread of like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, why'd you quit your job? You're about to have a kid. You need money and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. So my plan was to freelance, but instead I kind of spiraled for a few months and then found another full-time job. And,
Yeah.
you
Talk to me
know,
about the burnout and the mental health part though, because you said you wanted, it's in the title. So talk to me about what you learned about that because people struggle with this all the time.
well, I guess I'd heard the term nervous breakdown before.
Hmm.
And now it's not, people don't really use it. Doctors never use it, but I didn't know. It was, people use it like a joke. There's a movie like Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown,
Right. Right.
um,
But it's
and then
real. I've had a doctor on this podcast as a founder, and there is medical diagnosis for all of this, right? Burnout is a medical diagnosis.
well, it kind of sucks that they don't use that term anymore because nervous breakdown is like so accurate to what
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And I remember the day it happened because it was like an out of body experience. And you know, in Inception when the Paris street like
Yeah.
turns upward, it
Yeah.
was like that. It was like I've never done LSD, but it was that kind of psychedelic, but like dark,
Yeah.
pale. And
Yeah.
this is huge. I couldn't sleep like maybe half an hour a night. I mean,
I did the same thing happened to me, man. Mine just broke.
oh, what do you mean broke recently, or or just you kind of
This is
raw
like
dogged it for like
8 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just pure mental breakdown. Like that just totally just folded in on me one morning. I woke up and I thought I just knew something is gravely wrong. And
mm-hmm,
it's the same thing. My experience, like you're saying, is just decades of holding things inside, right? And at some point,
mm-hmm.
yeah, your brain says enough's enough. Like that was my experience. So what do you want to share? What are you comfortable sharing about that for people that might be going through some of these things?
Well, I'm comfortable sharing anything. I mean, the one thing I'll say is like as dark and it's happened to me twice, but as dark and as hopeless as things seemed, I always listened to like uh, professionals, and
Yeah.
I listened to good advice, and I didn't like ignore advice, because it's important to listen to good advice when you're in that spot because you're not really thinking rationally and probably you're viewing everything negatively. So
100%.
and you can't listen to everybody. So find a few trusted people. And by the way, they might not be necessarily like very close to you. You never know.
Yeah.
Like somebody you might be an acquaintance with has a heart to heart with you, and you could learn. That happened to me. You learn a ton,
Yeah.
and that's what I would be open-minded to anything, and I would definitely not listen to any. If you've ever seen anything in a movie, it's about like 12-step or um, ECT or any of that stuff. I mean, there's certain side effects to all this stuff, but it's not like in the movies. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think you said that probably the most, and I was the same way. The most important thing is just being open to trying things to get better, uh,
Mm-hmm.
as hard it is, right? Like, it's just the most brutal, hard thing that you'll ever do. And I always say this, like, to your point, like, professional help, friends, like, a support system. Mine came in the form of friends and family. It helps a lot if you have that friends and family. And then modern medicine, like, there's stigma around that too. But modern medicine's a massive help. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just those combinations. And then at the end of the day, right? You just can't give up, dude. And it's second to second, one foot in front of the other. Sometimes that's all you can do. I think this is one of the things I think about a lot now that I'm better. I love your thoughts on this is um it's there's such stigma around like, oh, grind hard and you gotta be the best that you can be. And it's okay to just have really shitty bad days and not do a lot. And it's okay to have a handful of them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Not you're not like your quota isn't just one every 30 days, right? Like there's no
Yes.
quota on bad days here, people. Like obviously, if it's extended along a long period of time, you have to get help. But at the same time, there's just I feel like we make people feel bad for feeling bad.
Yeah, and I don't like that when when they say, "Oh, the happiest country in the world is Denmark," and this and that. It's like happiness and sad. Like the happiest country in the world is probably the one where they're openly happy and openly sad, and they're open with their emotions. Like,
Yeah.
how are
Yeah.
you going to have one without the other? It's like the brightest, the lightest country in the world. It's like, well, they have dark
Yeah.
years. So
Yeah. And
it's
even
a
defining happy, right? Like the definition of happy is so widely different for people.
yeah, I mean, when they interview these Finnish and Swedish, they usually say the same thing. They're like, we're content. So for them, they're like, we're comfortable. We're not afraid. We're not like scared that we're going to lose everything tomorrow. But they're like chill, you know? They
Mhm.
they're not openly exuberant. So yes, it's different for everybody, and it's an unrealistic goal. I think it's important to find meaning in your life and not happiness. And not every day has to be meaningful either, because that's a lot of pressure. But um, I think there's a time and a place, and it's I think it's important to mentor and volunteer. I think competing against 22-year-olds is a recipe for depression and
Mm,
anxiety. And by the
interesting.
way, it's not all our fault. It's kind of the way things are set up. But like mentoring a 22-year-old is happiness is like a recipe for
Yeah,
happiness.
yeah, for sure.
And when I went to Japan, I noticed the sushi restaurants. There's always an older guy, a middle guy, and a younger guy, and there's three of them. And I would love to. I think interaction amongst generations, like healthy interaction, is super important. Um,
Dude, this has been coming up recently on our episode, but I sold my place in the Bay Area and I live in a generational home. My in-laws live with me and profound impacts on my 2-year-old son. I know for
hmm
sure. Like him recognizing the importance of a family unit without him really even knowing what it is. And, I've said I've gotten people literally stop me in public, moms in particular say, what, like, how old your son? And they can't believe how young he is and just like the energy he has. And they're like,
Mm.
he's just seems like a special little dude. And I'm like, I think he is because he's got this perspective and then you layer on the just additional attention, love, and care he gets, right? Like that's irreplaceable.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mention that because I live with my parents. Um, so we're multi-generational too. They're right next door, and it's super important for our kids, I think. And
Yeah.
it's very unusual in America, but if you think about it, it's
It's
before the
normal
last
everywhere else.
50 years that we all did it. Yeah, in a lot of the world we still do it, and a lot of young people are like afraid of living with their parents, but in a lot of the world that's exactly what you do until you're like 30 or something to get
Hmm.
married.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, there's annoying things about it, but overall I'd say it's a really
Oh,
good
100%.
good
And
thing.
then, as obviously the world happens and things progress, I think there's a perspective and appreciation that you get, but then also it preps you for when they get older and they need to start have care and stuff. Like my in-laws
Yeah.
aren't there by any means, but like Now it's not just, hey, you're living your life and then boom, I got to figure this out. This is a
Yes.
gradual, ongoing thing. And you just get to, the appreciation has been
Yeah.
pretty profound for me.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting ahead of it. Like we moved my parents from upstairs to downstairs and built our own wing, and
Yeah.
we're proactive, and that's important, right? Because it, it gives you some stability and sense of control, but a
Yeah.
healthy sense of control
Yeah. Yeah.
that you're doing
Healthy.
when you can, controlling the things you can.
So, dude, I just realized we're already an hour and 30 in, man. This has been incredible. Uh, we've had so many different, really interesting nuances and insights. I do want to get you because my little man is eventually going to wake up here soon. I want to
Okay, okay,
give,
yeah.
I want to give you time, at least the next uh, 10, 15 minutes to just talk about you currently and today, unless there's anything else you want to talk about in this
No, no,
format,
I
chapter
think
two,
that's
chapter
good.
three, but like
I think
it's been
that
beautiful so
sets it up
far.
well.
Awesome, man. I truly deeply more know who you are as a human being. So
Well, I think
take
I
us
know
through.
myself now. I appreciate it. I know you better, but I know myself better now just going
Thanks,
through this. It's
man.
really, and I've had a lot of podcasts, but this is going places I haven't, which is really cool.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
man. That's what we're here to do. Because I think which all of these things, like you want to talk about content, man. We already got 40 shorts ready to go here. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly, right?
you're
Yeah.
dropping so much insight, and you can do some really profound things with them as well, with your
Hmm.
creative brain. So take me through the shit show, man. Take me through the shit show.
Well, it's that's why it was so good to set up where I am now because as you've seen, as what I've described, I've been in a lot of shit show work experiences,
Hmm.
and I've been in a shit show mental health experiences. And I say it bad. All of these things aren't necessarily bad or good. There's always life's always going to be chaotic and come at you in weird ways. The creative process is chaotic.
Yep.
It's about how you navigate it,
Yep.
and sometimes you don't resist, right? You
Right.
be the turtle, and sometimes the current will carry you forward if you just chill out a little bit.
Ooh, I like that.
I think I got that from Along Came Polly, the Hank
Yes.
Azaria character. But I think that I'd realize big places, small places, corporate places, indie places, big city places, American, Dutch. I've worked at all these places. I'm like, eventually, you're like, this place is a shit show.
Right.
And it's not always negative. It's just like, wow, everybody. It's almost like a dysfunctional family. It's like nobody really has it together.
Yeah.
And some of these places will fool me for a while. By the way, some places have a great culture and not good work. Other places have good work, terrible culture. So what I'm trying to do is, what I've always been trying to do is take the best parts of all these things and put them together.
Yeah.
And it was an accident. What happened was an accident, but I always had this idea of an agency called Shit Show, and it was going to be TV, not TV, but like a comedic video about
Right.
the owner of an agency giving a tour of his agency and proudly showing people this agency that was a shit show, and instead of hiding the chaos, he celebrated it. And
Hmm.
then I'd had this. I have so many random ideas, but I had this idea probably 10 years. And eventually, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm realizing I'm never going to find a director and actors to do this. I mean, I didn't do it in San Francisco, and it would have been way easier out there. I'm like, and I started writing a lot of Onion-style parody articles, and myself and a couple writers on LinkedIn who I've never met, we're trying to make each other laugh and always liking each other's stuff. We'd have like 3 likes, but it was our core group of weirdos.
Your core group of weirdos. So cool.
And yeah, some of these people have like such a dark sense of humor. I'm like, you can say that on LinkedIn. Like I really learned from other people. Like you can say whatever you want. I wouldn't. I have a different sense of humor. Like maybe I'm not as dark, but like I learned you can say anything. And I was self-conscious because I'm like, oh, LinkedIn's a professional network. And at one point, I'm like, wait a second, I'm a writer. I'm a comedy writer.
Right.
Everything I post that's absurd, comedic, or weird, like that's showing my chops.
Yeah.
And so one one Monday morning, I posted this article that I put hardly any thought into called, Embracing the Chaos Shit Show creative launches, and I took 10 seconds to generate an AI picture of 3 smug founders standing in front of a modernist office building in Venice, California.
Mm-hmm.
And I said parody. At no point was I trying to fool anybody. It was an insane article. Like if the headline and the picture sounds crazy because it had a shit logo on the side that it just generated automatically, the
Right.
article was insane. Like the article said that one of our clients was called BlockChai, and it was a it was a crypto company that pivoted to tea.
Yeah, yeah. I read it. I read it. It's fantastic.
So I went for a walk with my dog. I come back and that thing has like 100 reactions. And some guy from Australia is like, I'm in Venice. I'm around the corner. Let's talk. I want to collaborate. I'm from Australia. He's from Perth, Australia. And I'm like, oh God, what have I done? Because all these people thought it was real. And I'm like, what the hell happened? And it was weird because I didn't mention my name in it. I wasn't on the picture. So even if this place was real, why would they think I had anything to do with it? And then a lot of people thought it was, some people knew it was a joke and thought it was funny. And they're like, you got to make this real. You got to do a
Yeah.
website. And I'm like, a website? Why do I need a website? This isn't real. It's like, well, it's going to be real. I was like, okay. And they're like, you got to get a client. You got to have merch. And some woman wrote me, she's like, have you ever thought about having a Substack? And I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I have thought of having one. But I
Yeah.
don't have time for that. And she's like, well, I'll do it. So she still works with me. She's my Substack editor. So I started the Shitlist newsletter.
That's awesome.
And I remember one night, like the first week, I got out of bed at like 3:30 in the morning. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, India's getting up right now. And I would go downstairs and I would start talking to people, like citizens, I call them. They voted on it. They call themselves citizens. But I was talking to people in India and Australia and Alberta, Canada, and I was basically doing the Elmo thing, like, hey, everybody okay? And people were like telling me what they're doing, or this guy's like, I'm listening to Yacht Rock. I'm like, you guys listen to Yacht Rock in Alberta, Canada? So we became friends, and Indians and Nigerians and Croatians. And the first guy I hired as a freelancer was a Ethiopian guy that speaks German and has an American sense of humor. The second person I brought on board, I call them shit stirrers. I'm the global shit stirrer. The second shit stirrer was a Scottish woman living in Croatia. So we were all vibing on the same frequency. Like it's almost like that story of stone soup, where you have a wooden spoon and an empty bowl, and people are like, here, you got potatoes? What are you doing? Oh, you
Right.
only have potatoes. You need lettuce. Like everybody was bringing something to the table, and it became
Right.
this movement. And we had like 700 people in a WhatsApp, and people were like, they're like, I don't know what this is, but I want to be a part of it. And we started getting, we very quickly got a few cool clients, some of them nonprofits, like the George Romero Foundation, the zombie
Mhm.
director.
Nice.
That was probably in the first 2 weeks. This guy who started a calamari jerky company, dried squid, he hit me up. He's like, I'm driving around the West Coast right now in a Toyota RAV. I got a 7-foot tall squid costume in the back. I walk into these shops wearing my squid costume to let the owner try I'm like, that's perfect. Let's do it. So they became a client. I did a naming assignment for Spotify and Kona Beer, where I named a concert, which was cool. I love all these like crazy
Yeah.
different things. I started Living Seawall, which Mark Cuban invests in this Miami company that builds these 3D printed concrete seawalls. So
Uh-huh.
our client is the church where it's going to be built. And I did a 2-minute documentary to raise money for that. And it's sincere and serious. So I'm like, well, this is going to be a 2.5-year thing before it gets built. I got to keep it like loose and fresh. So I created this character named Carl the Manatee. And he's like the mascot of the seawall, but he's also the creative director of Shit Show. So all creative decisions go through him. And manatee's always been one of my favorite animals because they just eat, they just chill, they just float, they're gentle, and they just eat grass, and they don't cause problems for anybody. And they've survived 100 million years, so they're doing something right.
Right.
So I created a manatee meditation video. I did a pilot for a manatee cartoon. I gave him a sidekick, Iggy the iguana, who's like a feisty iguana who gets mad if you call him an invasive species because he didn't invade anywhere. He was brought here as a pet and released. And I started making all this original content. And by the way, I skipped this part, but Hollywood thought it, a lot of people in Hollywood, like at Prime Video and HBO and Netflix and Walt Disney, they thought that the article was a teaser for a TV show or movie. So a lot of people were connecting with me because of that. So like 40% of the first views were from Hollywood. It was So it was funny because early on I realized I'd read this New York Times article that said that Pixar of the future was going to be 15 people with laptops. I'm like, I know more than 15 people. So I started making animated content, music videos. I got like 50 songs on Spotify, maybe more right now, under Justin Cram with 2 M's. The Shitless newsletter has paid subscribers, 430 subscribers for free. I mean, it just keeps growing. So
Right.
I went to Sundance Film Festival to meet brands because Brand Backed Entertainment, I mean, it's been around for a long time. Like the Willy Wonka movie, 1974, was paid for by Quaker Oats for their new candy, which is why it's called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's the brand name.
Interesting. So tell me about this
Yeah.
experience. Well, one, how is the company formed now? Like, are you trying to just create, or have you created the traditional agency, but just a cool one? Or is the
No,
business model totally different? Is the structure totally different? Explain
it's
to me
totally
how that's
different.
all.
It's totally different. First of all, I don't pitch. Like everything's inbound through LinkedIn. I just post. People are like, how do you find your clients? I'm like, I post really unhinged posts on LinkedIn, and then they reach out to me. Like the site, our website is such a filter because it's kind of crazy and it's out there. I do have a strategy behind it for brands too bold to blend in. We turn LOL into ROI with no BS. So there's a strategy behind it, but the people who come to me are already primed to do cool work. So there's no convincing that goes on.
Right.
The first step is called the Shitstorm, which is an hour brainstorm with musicians, a puppeteer, a rapper, a sitcom writer, showrunner, and a stand-up comedian. And then I record the whole thing, give the client the highlights. We don't call them clients, we call them creative soulmates. And then they get the transcript too, which is what we did for Living Seawall, Calamari Jerky, and that's like a couple $1,000. So that's like dating, by the way, because we're feeling each other out. Other agencies call it a chemistry check. We're making a month's worth of creative content while doing the chemistry check.
Right.
So that's where it is now. I wouldn't call us a traditional agency because we're so much faster. There's no bloat. We respond quickly. Like we're sort of like the closest I would say is that Maximum Effort, the Ryan Reynolds agency, where we respond very fast to crises or
Yeah.
that Cracker Barrel thing. Like their agency didn't respond to it, but I did. I created Cracker apparel and a T-shirts that said "Biscuits are bipartisan," and I had famous people who are politically different but friends, like Eminem and Kid Rock, doing a bro hug in front of Cracker Barrel. And people
Yeah.
are like, I want to buy that T-shirt. And I was just doing what I would do if I was their agency. I wouldn't do nothing, that's for sure. And I wouldn't directly address the logo. I would remind people why they loved it in the first place and why I liked Cracker Barrels, because it's not political.
Right.
I thought everybody liked Cracker Barrel. It's like
Right.
those fun wooden games, the nice crafts that you buy, the friendly service,
Yeah.
food everybody likes. So
Yeah.
I was kind of offended by it being politicized, and instead of going on an angry rant, I did something positive. And I think I'm a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain, and he was friends with Ted Nugent, and they were total opposites politically. But he's like, you know what? He likes beer and barbecue, and I do too. And we like music. He's like, you don't need that much in common with people that like them. And I would agree. Like
I would
maybe
agree,
you like
man.
the same
That's
team.
one of
Maybe
the
you like the same
problems
band,
with
that's
this
it.
world, right?
Maybe you both like to bowl. Like what? You just need one thing, and
Yeah.
most people have several things in common, but you only need like one
100%.
passion.
Yeah. And I always say this too, right? Like why I loved what I do is, we all bleed red blood. We all have the same anxieties, depressions. We have the same exact feelings, right?
Yeah,
And
we're
how
all
you express
humans.
those and the actions you take is another story. But fundamentally, we're the same thing. Like that's what makes humans so special, is because we are this like cohesive consciousness um, that have so many shared experiences, but yet we like to make it so divisive at times.
What reminds me of that is if you read Rumi, the poet from like the 13th century or whatever, the Persian poet, it sounds like he's living today, like the same stuff.
Yeah,
Walt Whitman, the same thing. I
yeah.
mean, I didn't even get into Walt Whitman until recently. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's like right up my alley. I like this.
I got to read all of these things. I haven't read any of these either. So this is at the
Some of
way.
these writers sound like we could hang out with them right now, you know?
Right, right,
Even
right.
Alan, I got into Alan Watts recently, and he's like this meditation guru, expert, whatever you want to call him, but he's funny and he's casual and he sounds like he's having a beer with you or something while talking about the most, you know, spiritual, whatever, complex philosophical things, but it's just so grounded and it's awesome.
Yeah, I love that, man. So tell me how this is organized then, as far as like you have copywriters, it's just you. Are you a freelance cohort or conglomerate and you bring people in that are part of the community to serve the client?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
would compare it kind of like Hollywood be the closest thing. Like depending on the brief, I just bring in the certain people who are the best suited for it, based on their
Right.
talents. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it is like no, there's never going to be an assignment where everybody works on it.
Yeah.
You know,
Gotcha. And
and
then
they're
the kind
all
of
independent creatives, and in fact, I'll help them get hired full time. Like they're not exclusive. That's another difference. They're not exclusive to me. I will help them get full time jobs, and they can work with me on the side. Like that's
yeah.
I'll be the
Yeah.
fun side job for them. I don't
Yeah.
I don't care.
No, that's fantastic. And so the only consistent person is you then within the equation.
Yeah. Well, I do have another. I call her the distiller of chaos, but she is um, the head of account. She was head of client services. Most people call it, but she's the one that keeps me. I'm the castle in the sky. You know, build your castles in the sky, but be sure
Yeah.
to stay grounded. Like she's the one that keeps them grounded. So she's a consistent member of the team that every client would meet with for sure.
Right. So let's do this. Little man's starting to wrestle around, and it's been just such a really insightful and just super. We've been all over the place, and it's been beautiful. And we are going to have many more conversations because I feel like
Yeah.
we just barely scratched the surface.
Yes.
But there's a couple things I still want to do though. I ask one question of every guest at the end. I want to see, next 3 to 6 months what that looks like. But there's one burning question that I do have before we get there, which is how do you make sense of what happened to you? Because and if your answer is I can't explain it, because you're just inundated with messages on, and especially LinkedIn is the place, right? If I see another AI post, I'm gonna puke. I hope we can collaborate on the whole AI thing because it just
Mm.
makes me so sick to my stomach if I see people trying to rehash. And I have seen, and I'm sure you have seen this too, the beast behind the curtain, which is a lot of these quote unquote influencers just don't know shit about shit, but they know how to play the game and the algorithms, right?
Mm. Mm.
But
Mhm. Mhm.
and I actually do think this crazy virality that you hit is in essence hitting the lottery because it's just more and more rare. And but this is my point of view, and you could have a totally different take. So explain this crazy thing that happened to you that has literally turned from a viral post into a company. Why? What? How?
Um, I haven't really. Nobody's really asked me that before. So, but this is the first thing that comes to mind is that little detail I told you where I was trying to make two people laugh
Hmm.
and myself, presumably.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, instead of talking to a big audience, I wasn't trying to please a bunch of people. I was only trying to make a couple quirky people who share my sense of humor smile.
Right.
And my mentor from who started Miami Ad School, Ron Seacrest, would always say like, don't write to everybody, write to one person.
Mm.
The guy who wrote the most of the lemon ads for Volkswagen, he was writing to his friend. Like he would imagine he was talking to his friend, and his cynical friend who didn't care about ads or cars or anything.
Right.
And it wasn't intentional, but I would also say when you ain't got, oh, but back to rock and roll history, Bob Dylan
Right.
said, when you ain't
Yes,
got nothing, you
please.
got nothing to lose. I
Yeah.
had nothing to lose. I'm 46. I was 46. I had some freelance clients, but they were all way long before AI. Some of my friends who got paid so much money, like $200,000, 250, hadn't worked in 8 months, 10 months. I'm like, the writing's on the wall. I'm like, I got
Right.
to be who I am, because pretending to be somebody else isn't going to work, and it's a lot of work and stressful. It's like I started to realize wearing a mask and trying to pretend somebody is exhausting and leads to mental health issues. And
Dude, that is
the whole,
such a
yeah.
beautiful insight, and I think I'm glad I'm the first one, and I got the honor to ask you that because I think that is it's just beautiful, man. I think it absolutely similar kind of thing to me, right? Like I still have a full-time corporate job, and for the longest time, I stayed in this crypto Twitter echelon, knowing that, like, dude, that what we've just done, guess who could care less? Even though they tell me they could care, crypto Twitter. You know what crypto Twitter
Okay.
wants to do? They want to flip money. They're degens. They just want to make money. So deep, meaningful conversations about life advice and how to better up. They don't give a shit. They just want the next
Yeah.
gambling casino to go to, right?
Well,
LinkedIn makes the
yeah.
perfect sense, but there was something in me saying that, like, oh no, that's a little risky. But it's like, you got it. It is such a critical message. You have to live your life and be yourself. Um, and I firmly do think that if you're doing that and you are uncomfortable or it is not working out for you, you are just not in the right place.
Right. I used to think I was introverted, and I realized I was just exhausted playing somebody I wasn't, being somebody I
Mm,
wasn't.
that's such a beautiful insight too.
Yeah, since I started this, I'll talk to everybody. If I go to a party, I'll talk to every single person. I mean, I most people are into what they feel my energy, but I bet if they're not, I'm not bothered by it. I used to think people say they don't care what other people think. They're just trying to pump themselves up, and like, this is the first time in life I get it. When you're really into something and really passionate, and you're really being who you're supposed to be, you genuinely aren't going to be bothered by what other people think.
Dude, I
It's true.
think I connect with that so much. And I always say this, I hope people can find that feeling because there's many people that go through life that never find it. And it's, I know the brain, the human brain always wants to go to, well, how do I do it? And the hard part is, I don't know. My only answer that I think I could ever tell anybody is to forcibly keep on trying new things and learn, like, and put yourself in situations.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
know.
I started beginner's mind. I started learning Portuguese like during COVID, and if you learn another language or learn anything new, you're constant. It's so humbling. You're constantly sucking, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And if you just do one thing like that, you're reminded every week, and that's will open up new worlds to you. That's why some people look at like a hobby as I used to think a hobby is like a nice, fun thing to have on the side, and now I realize it's a lifesaver. Like, can save your life,
Yeah. 100%.
and is a
So,
necessity, not a nice thing to have.
yeah. And then people refuse to even do that, which is really, really tough to see people do. Um, let's do this, man. Next 3 to 6 months, what are you most excited about? What are you concentrating on? Hit me.
I'm most excited about this. Our client, George Romero Foundation, we're developing a animated series with a zombie puppet who's the symbol of the George Romero Foundation, and it's a late night type show featuring this puppet interviewing um, people from the horror genre, like scary movie directors and stars. And it's original content, and I'm talking to streamers right now. We'll probably release it on YouTube at first, but I'm talking to brand partners, and I've been working on this thing since Shit Show started, and one of my co-writers worked for Colbert Report for 8 years and has won a bunch of Emmys, and he's like, we work great together. So that's an exciting client because it's a lot of fun, but it's also for a great cause, because the whole point of the Romero Foundation is to inspire a new generation of filmmakers and creatives with
Yeah.
socially conscious, like, he was making zombie movies, but they're really about consumerism and deep things like sexism, racism, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's underneath the surface, and at the core, it's just an entertaining movie. But if you want to go
Yeah.
deeper, you can, and that's what we're, honoring his legacy and sharing it with the new generation. It also happens to be a very profitable, great genre that's saving Hollywood. So
Yeah.
it's really, that's what I'm most excited about, and just continuing our original content, because like I said, control the things you can control. I can control the output that I'm making. I can't control when a prospective client's going to call me back.
Yeah. It's beautiful, man. All right. So to wind down, I always ask one question. Don't be nervous. But if someone were to ask you what it was like to be on the Mikey G podcast experience, what would you say?
I would say enlightening.
Mm,
Um, I've had the opportunity to do like probably 30 podcasts, and I've had all these great conversations, but this time we were like, it was almost like hitting on gold mining, um, and finding all these nuggets in a very comfort. Part of it's patience, we're not rushing to the end, where typically we start at shit show, and the ability to wind things back and take our time
yeah.
was a great, welcoming, warm, friendly experience, where I feel like we've known each other for forever, and look forward to knowing you for a long time from now.
Thanks, man. That is my goal. And if that is really your comment and your feedback, I have accomplished my goal today. And I think you said it right, right? Like you definitely said it right. We hit so many nuggets of gold throughout this. I mean, everywhere from like, my comment to like just and what was cool about your concepts were they were not, my head was going, he's absolutely gonna say like uh school was horrific. And he's like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. And these things where I thought your head was gonna go, it went in a different place. And and I always say this, man, like we talked about the same things, like wearing a different mask, stress, anxiety, the mental health part, adversity, the ups and downs of life. Like none of this is rocket science. But there is not a conversation that goes by, because I've actually thought to myself this. I'm like, damn, man, like I've had hundreds of conversations with beautiful people like yourself. We do talk about the same themes. Like, am I ever going to get bored with this? And a couple times I'm like, should I even keep on doing this? And then I always come back to like, why would I ever ask myself that question? Because you just gave me so many more new beautiful insights today around the same subjects. So the things that has stuck out to me were that that high school, the fact that you mentioned the rock class and the extracurricular activities, the fact of the juxtaposition between like, hey, I was a class clown. Oh, by the way, I was second in my class and I applied to Harvard. And the things that stuck out to you about the Harvard interview. And then we go through and how detailed and insightful you were. You were calling people. I know people that are very thoughtful and introspective and actually intelligent. This is one of the things that I've found. It's always a tell to me that talking out is how vivid your memory was, and you were calling people by their first and last names. I've found some weird correlation there. You're talking about your mentors or this person that affected you. People that had these vivid memories. And are good storytellers, right? You framed everything in a story, and you understand the power of a story, and you did a beautiful job. And what's cool is you did it in your way, because you took time. I could tell that you didn't feel pressure, and you were deeply thinking about things, and that really means a lot to me. And there were just so many beautiful insights, and I can't wait to cut this up. And like I said in the beginning too, man, like I think you know what I do now, and you're a creative and I'm a creative, and I would love to figure out how do we use my format in an interesting way for some of your clients, because I think there's potential and opportunity there, right?
That'd be awesome.
And maybe it is something that is this huge juxtaposition, which is we get um, we get a very funny, not deep client, but then they
Mm,
come through
mm.
this like crazy, deep, reflective process with Mikey G. And they're kind of a little
Mhm.
caught off guard of what's going on.
Yeah.
Like there's so many unlimited opportunities, but
What if that was like almost like onboarding? It's like
correct,
part of the
right?
process,
Yeah.
right?
Like
We
now,
got to
now
go
Mikey
there.
G is part of the process. And if, and by the way, they never know this, right? But they're like, not only are you Mikey G's part of our podcast and our onboarding
Mm,
process, you don't tell him how long it is. Now it's a 90-minute conversation. And by the way, at the end, he's gonna grade you. But they don't know
mm,
this
mm.
until after. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
they're interviewing to be the client. I mean, there's so many
Yes.
different things that we could do.
I
Um,
always wondered why client, like in my case, the client, all of us creative soulmates, we have so much in common. I always wondered why, like, we should hang out together. We got to have like a meet. We got to have an event, or like these people need to know each other. Like the squid
oh,
person needs to,
100%.
the Ecuadorian artist and the George Romero, and like you, and
Yeah.
it should be. We have too much in common, and we are vibing on the same level to just be separate silos. You know,
Oh,
doesn't
oh,
make any
absolutely,
sense.
100%. I also to your point, though, is the and I'm talking about this with my buddy Adam, who has the AI company, and I was like, we were thinking about all go to market and marketing and all these different things in advertising, and I was like, dude, we're building Skynet, right? Like we have a superhuman brain captured in this
Mm.
system. I was like, why don't we just ask it who it wants to work with? I was like, isn't that the
Yes.
better way to do it? And
Yes.
it's the
Yeah.
same thing for an ad agency or somebody in your position. It's like, dude, enough of this, like, am I good enough for you?
Mm.
It's always a two-way contract in my mind if you do
Yes.
great things. So there
Yes.
is absolutely onus on the client to be like, are you good enough in a person that I want to be on? And so I had this guy, um, Matt Williams. He was actually the CEO of the Martin Agency who made the
Mhm,
Gecko and
mhm,
everything.
mhm,
And
mhm,
he came
mhm.
on a couple weeks ago and dude, he's boiled his down. So he's gone on the strategic side. And you know how ad agencies and stuff work is like strategy was never a freelancy thing. It was always copywriting or creative directors or
Yeah.
the creative
Mhm,
people were
mhm,
freelancers.
mhm, mhm.
Strategic people always were like corporate in part of the system.
Right.
And so he was like, well, why can't I do that? Because that is fun and cool. And I want to build a cohort of people I want to work with. And his mantra is simple. He's like, I want to do good work with people I like. Right. And so
Yes.
like there
Mhm.
should be a two-way communication in anything you do, and especially in advertising, right? Because I don't think if your ethos and being are not aligning, why waste your time? You're right
Do you
back to
know?
your math
Have you ever
thing,
heard
right?
how Trey Parker and Matt Stone pick writers? Is they go to Hawaii on a retreat, and they're like all in a house together for a week, like 10 people, and they basically hire the ones who are like who they get along with and
Yeah,
vibe with and are easy because they're like we're gonna spend a lot of nights and weekends together for like years maybe, and we
yeah,
have to know that we can not drive each other nuts.
yeah,
And if you're there, you're already a good writer, right? You got
right,
that. You got the chops. You got the craft. Now it's
100%.
about everything else.
Yeah. And I think that's the last thing I would say, man, is just I really enjoyed your brain because I do get a lot of tech focused entrepreneurs, and I'm not saying they're all the same, but they have similar backgrounds, whereas you were comfortable. The one thing I did notice, you were comfortable spending time on like a very specific story, like Red Bull, right?
Mm,
Like
mm-hmm,
most of
mm-hmm.
my previous guests, and it's actually not. It's not because of the tech. This is what it is. I just figured out what I'm trying to say is most people look at it, and actually this is probably why it is, and this explains your creative brain is a lot of tech entrepreneur are more math science focused. So when
Mm-hmm.
I ask them to tell me chapter 2, they really start going chronologically boom 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 boom, whereas like
Right.
you know we started talking about Red Bull. I thought we were halfway through chapter 2 and you're like, oh no, I'm still in college, man. And it's because you took the time to breathe. And I think, dude, that's just such an impactful way to be,
Yeah.
to think, and to talk. And more people need to do
I
that.
didn't even think about this till now, but chapter three, like Red Bull was Red Bull. I worked for Red Bull as a client in agencies too. So I worked in college. I worked after college. Then I'm in an agency. The first TV cinema ad I did was Red Bull, and then I did a feature film branded content for Red Bull that was Sports Illustrated mockumentary of the year. So
Yeah.
it keeps coming back into my life. I mean, it taught me so much of what I know.
Yeah.
Um,
And what I really got from that, it just means that you are deeply reflective, like you think about things. What, when we built my original streaming company, which was called Midlife Crisis, which is a whole joke, and we can go into that story offline. One of the things that we built pillars, right? And one of them was think deeply. We
mm,
just live in this age where people react to things immediately. They don't know shit about shit. And now
yeah,
they have a firm opinion as to why people need to die or bad things need to happen. And it's like, hey, have you ever researched what actually happened? No, I don't know. I just saw it on social media,
you,
right?
you should.
Um,
So I saw Will I Am at Davos yesterday on CNBC, and I'm like, why am I watching this? And then I'm like, he had the most nuanced, thoughtful thoughts about AI creativity I've heard. Where he wasn't like, it's awesome, it sucks. He was making all these smart.
yeah,
He was talking about sampling and jazz in the '70s. You think jazz musicians in the '70s thought, what do you think they thought about sampling? He's like, my whole career is made on sampling. I mean, what would I be without it?
yeah,
And then he was talking about he teaches, which is cool. He teaches at Arizona State, I think. And he says everybody's going to have an agent. Like, they're basically going to have a lockbox of a certain kind. And when you get hired, you will bring your agent with you. So they're
yeah,
hiring you, but they're hiring your digital twin,
right,
essentially.
right.
And they could have AI without you, but they're not going to have you. If they want you, so you'll be competing against AI, and honestly, you'll probably have an advantage. You will, if you have an interesting point of view, you know who
Yep,
you are, you know what you
yep.
stand for, and you have taste.
Yep. And this is 100% what we will talk about when I bring you on the other podcast about AI and creativity, because
Yeah, I would love
it's a
to.
very meaningful conversation, which is, I'll even go to the extremes that I think all copyright goes away. And
Mm,
because you can't, you just can't ban that. You could with blockchain, but at some point, AI is going to uh, just be able to replicate any form. Because let's be honest, creativity is stolen from something anyway,
yeah.
right? And so it's
Oh,
not
that's
like there's no new
the
novel idea.
Ken
And
Burns country music. If you watch that series, you're like, how does anybody own anything? Like, it's all folk music
100%.
just being passed around. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, copyright law comes in. It's like, freeze, it's mine. Like, happy birthday to you was good morning to all. It's just one person decided to say,
Yeah.
I own
Uh,
this. And it's like, you didn't write that. You did not write the words. You didn't write the lyrics. You
and
just were
I own
born
this.
in an
And
age where they
and
had
so I
money. Yeah.
think this will inevitably get to this, because not only is everything just going to be so shared across these AI distributed systems, AI will start creating things more fathomable than human brains can ever think. And it's not like the AI is going to be like, this is mine. They're just going to share it with humans. So, to your point, what are you really left with? You are left with yourself, your personality, your creative thoughts, your identity, which is a hodgepodge of all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
is going to be your uniqueness. Uh, and AI won't be able to replicate that, because there's always still a human element to that too. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds. But all that to be said, man, 2 hours and 8 minutes now
Wow.
you just spent with me, and it was beautiful. And I really, really admire your brain. I admire your openness. And I just can't wait to continue this friendship, man. I'm cooking on a lot of things. I know you are too. I would be shocked if we don't figure out a way to collaborate in the future. And I'm just grateful for you as a human, man.
That would be great, Mikey. It's awesome to get to know you and look forward to keeping in touch. And we're also two dads, so that's a whole different story.
Oh yeah, brother. We got a lot to talk about on that. And
Yeah.
we're both in a generational home.
Hmm.
So we got a lot of similars. We're just
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
opposite
exactly.
sides of the
That's a
coast.
whole different story.
Yeah, exactly. And so, with that being said, people, you have just experienced the Mikey G podcast experience with my man Justin, my new brother from another mother, down in where are you at now?
Fort
Miami?
Lauderdale. Fort
Fort
Lauderdale.
Lauderdale, baby. Shit show creative extraordinaire. We love you all. Mikey and Justin.